Okay, we got a kind of a new version of mortgage fraud that has sprung up in the United States that the US regulator is really, really mad about and wants to take some extreme action. And we've had the same kind of fraudulent behavior in mortgages in Canada for about 20 years, and our regulator couldn't not care at all. It's weird, right? Let me explain. This is not about fake income documents. Not about that. As I've told people many, many times on the channel, in the United States, they have an excellent linkage between the IRS and big mortgage lenders, and they immediately can find out whether the document they have, the tax document they have in front of them in the United States, is a fake or is real. And because it's so efficient, it never happens. I mean, if you're a crook and you think, okay, should I try it again? Should I try and see? No, you after you've failed like 6 times, you just give up that whole approach. You just don't do it anymore. So that's a kind of a dead issue in the United States. Not totally dead, because there's still other ways you can try to pretend you're in a brand new job. I mean, but in reality, it's much, much, much less than it is in Canada, and has been for over nearly 15 years now. They've had this IRS checking system in place for a long time. So what's this new thing? This new thing is something that's come up in the last year in the United States, and it's kind of a function of their own real estate market in some regions. What it is people pretending that they're going to owner-occupy a home when they get a mortgage, but in fact, they have no intention of of moving in. The people who have no intention of moving in, they're going to rent that out. And once they buy it and get the mortgage based on the idea, because same in the United States as Canada, if you say that you're going to live inside the home, it's going to be your own primary residence, you can get a mortgage at a very low down payment. In the United States, it goes as low as 3%. We're 5%, but it can go as low as 3% in the United States. I think if you're a member of the armed forces, it could almost go to 0. I don't pretend to be an expert, but I know it's a very low down payment in certain specific situations. And that's what they did. They go for an extremely low down payment, and they end up within 30 days turning it into a rental property. Now, is this something that happens in Canada? Oh, yes. Hell yes. This happens consistently. Not much now. It doesn't happen much now, but when the FOMO was running hot, it used to happen all the time. 2020, 2022, 2021, people were saying, yeah, I'm going to move in. For sure I'm going to move in. And they never moved in. They just rented it. So the regulator's so mad in the States, and you might say, well, why? Why is this growing in the States so much? Well, it's like this. It's really, really hard. I should say really, but it's much, much harder in the United States to get a mortgage on a rental property. It's more expensive. It's bigger down payment. There's more likelihood of getting turned down. But it's always easier in the United States to buy a property if you convince the lender, convince the bank, convince the mortgage lender that you are moving into it. It's enormously easier, okay? I'm not saying the lender's not necessarily careful, trying to make sure that you don't have a previous property, or that there is it makes sense that you would move into this place. It's close enough to your work, all that stuff. But they do all that checking. But in the end, unlike Canada, where it's harder to get a rental mortgage, but it's not crazy hard. In a lot of places in the United States, it's crazy hard to get a rental mortgage. I mean, the United States mortgage lending system is not really built to support amateur landlords. That's not what they're about. They're good with getting more, if you want to build a rental complex, if you want to build 80 townhouses, if you want to build 200 townhouses, they have a fairly effective system for financing those in place. But again, that's a big, big project. I mean, in the United States, they simply are not interested. Banks, mortgage lenders are not interested in you just running out and buying one condo or buying one single family home to rent out. That's not what they're about. So, as certain factors in the property market made people interested in trying to short circuit this, I said, well, let's pretend that we're going to move in, but let's never move in. Let's just rent it a month later, and when the dust settles, and yeah, we'll make a good profit on this. And it'll be a slightly better rate, and it'll be an easier down payment. So let's do it. So it became a thing in the last year in the United States, the last 12 months. So now, of course, it becomes discovered because in the US, the regulator gives a shit. Like all mortgage regulators give a shit. Now, apparently they've laid off a ton of them because, DOGE and there's layoffs in the federal civil service, but they do care. They absolutely do care. And they said, you know what? We care so much. We might want to look at the mortgage originators, like the companies who originated these mortgages that were supposed to be owner occupied and and in fact, they turned into rentals. We might ask them for the mortgages back because some of them were put into the Fannie Mae system or the Freddie Mac system and the FHA system. And they might just say, hey, you mortgage company, you better buy this mortgage back because we found out that they're renting it. They rented it like a month later and we think you're full of shit and we want you to take it back, which could never happen in Canada. This was never happen in Canada. But more to the point, no one cares in Canada about this. The banks care. The banks don't like it. The banks don't like you pretending you're going to move into a house and then actually immediately renting it out. The banks hate that because correctly, it's a totally different risk profile for the bank. It's a completely different kind of risk. It needs to be underwritten differently and probably needs to have a higher rate in some cases. So the banks hate that. They hate it. They don't want you to do it. They will try to catch you if they can. But the regulator doesn't care. You never saw any bulletin from the bank regulator, OSFI, saying, hey, God, this is important. We got to really step up our vigilance on this. Never see it. You never, ever run into this as a regulatory issue in Canada. And yet we know it happens. Like there's some of these are closing this week. I guarantee you that there's 10, 15 mortgages closing in Canada right this week that the people who said they were going to move in never move in. It turns into a rental. I guarantee it. A couple of years ago, there was like 100 of those happening. So why doesn't our regulator care? Good question. Good fucking question. Because why don't they care about the fake income documents? Because to this day, CRA hasn't finished their work to develop the linkage so that a lender can check to see if the documents match. It hasn't happened yet. The confirmation system has not been finished. So our regulator doesn't care about this stuff, really. And I've never seen a regulator try to find ways to stop this or to make it a heinous crime. No way. Never. 30 years. Never seen it. The same way, even though after pushing and pushing and pushing, we got the government to say, yes, we're planning on doing this. We want to do this linkage so that this mortgage document fraud will stop. It still hasn't happened, okay? And that's bad. Just plain bad.